Hi, my name is Brian Skeet, and I am an industrial designer with Indige Design Collab. I'm originally from Tuba City, but I grew up at Grand Canyon National Park, and now I'm down here creating some really cool stuff together with Uniqueness and also ICC, Indigenous Design, no, Indigenous Community Collective, right? Collaborative. I'll eventually get that.
That's so funny. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the season premiere of REZponse Roundtable. We're in season 4 and we're on location at Raw and Juicy. A special shout out to Jen for letting us use Raw and Juicy, so if you're in the Florida area, especially Alice Beach, make sure you check this place out. I have with me today some very great guests, and I'll let them introduce themselves, but I have Indige Design Collab, so let's go. We'll start with Unique.
Hi, my name is Uniqueness. I am Navajo from the Navajo Nation, but I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Should I be really Navajo about this?
Go for it.
Okay.
I'm about it.
My first clan is known as a Touchini. My second clan is Ma'ideskizni. My fourth clan is Kia'ani, and my last clan is Potachini. I am a designer. I live and work in Phoenix, Arizona as a professional creative advocate, placekeeper. What else can I add to this? Artist, and just a person that tries to bring perspective in the creative realm.
Yes. And let's go over to Brian.
Okay. Hi, my name is Brian Skeet, and I am an industrial designer with Indige Design Collab. I'm originally from Tuba City, but I grew up at Grand Canyon National Park, and now I'm down here creating some really cool stuff together with Uniqueness and also ICC, Indigenous Design, no, Indigenous Community Collective, right? Collaborative. I'll eventually get that.
That's so funny.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the shout out.
On camera.
Yeah. So every time we do an episode, we always like to start out with our favorite question is, what is your favorite wrestling, and use it in a sentence.
You want to go first?
Sure. So I like using wah a lot, but I stopped using that because whenever I say it, people just look at me like, what's wrong with her? And then sometimes I like to use the.
Oh, use it. Can you use it in a sentence?
Zebro.
Zebra?
That's what I used to say in high school.
Yeah?
And then I stopped, yeah.
I've heard that, but I've never heard it in a sentence.
It's very rural.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And you have to do the Z.
You have to do the Z. Yeah. Welcome to Chinle.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
What about you, Brian?
So that was actually mine. Was
Yeah.
what?
Use
But-
it in a sentence.
Using the sentence.
Yeah. Or
I don't know. It's more of like a response.
okay.
You know, so like someone says something like really embarrassing that happened to them, and you just say what, and it just cracks people up. You know, it's like.
I think the equivalent for Mojaves when we say "wah" is "cough." Like it's something, like it's a response to something where it's like "cough." Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
"Wah." Yeah. It's the same thing, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's jump into it. So we are currently on location at Alice Beach, right?
Yeah.
Alice Beach. And we're here for an event. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about that and what we're here for?
Yeah, so we are actually on Alice Beach for the Digital Graffiti Festival. It happens once a year, and it's a moment where technology meets art, meets architecture. A friend of ours, Melanie, who had seen our production show that we had done on Roosevelt Row down in the Arts District area, saw us doing our thing, and she was just like, oh my gosh, they do this in Florida, you should go and see it. And so she enticed us to come, and that's why we're here.
So actually that projection show, I'm gonna like plug it in here, over here somewhere, but it's called the Rice Poster Show, and we actually did a live stream. It's on our YouTube, so I'll put a link up here for that. But Brian, what do you expect to get out of this whole experience, or what have you learned so far?
I think I've learned how to use a very simple technology to create something that's very interesting, in that they're not trying to overcomplicate it. They're not trying to map it. They're not trying to do anything too out of the box.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to create a simple tech setup that creates a really unique output, and everyone has their own interpretation of it.
So why is that so important, right? For somebody that does the work that you do as an industrial designer, and like, why is that so important, and how does that connect to, you know, Indigenous identity?
Yeah, I think just the technology in itself is very, it can get very cumbersome, in that you can think that you need all these expensive pieces of equipment, but really what it comes down to is how you're able to make the content, and it's
Make it accessible,
but also just not having any sort of parameters on the creativity, whether it's, you know, photography, whether it's 3D animation, graffiti art, film. That is all in what the person interprets the world to be and wants to express. And I think keeping that simple is what's really good about being here at Digital Graffiti, because you can really overcomplicate it by trying to map things out and trying to get the right angles and everything. But
I think trying to stuff things into a box, and the box is like really small.
But I think the architecture itself definitely lends an extra hand in that it steps up the type of expression of the overall piece.
It's almost like, from somebody coming from the outsider looking in that doesn't have any background or specialty that you guys do, it's like intimidating too. And then for me to have to experience some of this, it wasn't as intimidating. I'm like, wow, this is like really immersive and really cool experience. So looks like it's achievable, right? For
Yeah, the cool thing is we were able to chat with and spend some quality time with Brett Phares, who is the co-founder of the event. He's also the art curator, and so really being able to tap into behind the scenes and why he chose different angles and what color and what motion really worked with the wall space was really cool, because it meant that there was an intentionality, right? And that all they did was a call for art. The artist didn't know where their art was going to go in this space. And so he was the one that had to plan it out and kind of create a map for everyone to say, like, this piece is going to work right here because the architecture lends itself to like amplifying that. So
that's how all three of those things kind of like connect together.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like it's as far as like the art side, like it's very like random. It's very like not planned.
Yeah.
And then for me as a designer, it's like you're not planning any of this. You're just letting it do whatever.
Yeah.
And
you're just letting it be art.
Yeah.
Which is hard when you get into the technical space.
But just like it's combining both of these elements of art and design in a way where it's not forcing it, you know? And I think that's what I like most about the Digital Graffiti event is it's the blend of artistry and design.
So let's talk about you two as individuals, right? You guys came as a collaborative, which is Indige Design Collab. Can you tell us a little bit more about Indige Design Collab?
Yeah, so we're just a bunch of Indigenous designers who decided that we wanted to collaborate to really bring together the idea that design and any sort of space activation is really needed for Native peoples. We all have our different realms and our different skill sets and our different backgrounds, but when we come together, all these ideas start melding and start building. And as designers, we are problem solvers. But I think a lot of us have that background of being an artist. Like our artistry lends itself to us becoming the designer, and we use our creativity in a very intentional way. And so now that we're in this space with production art and kind of exploring this indigenizing space, I think we're able to bring other designers into it and give them a little bit more power and create a space where we're now all working together. So that's why I do it. That's why I'm excited to bring people in and be able to work with a ton of different skill sets.
I think from the very start, Unique and Sean originally had this idea, and I think being at ASU at the time, being a design student, and not seeing another Native person unless I search for them, right? And it's this really small school, and still no other Indigenous designers. And being a part of Indige Design Collab has really kind of it's been interesting. I mean, just the overall humble beginning of just the simple idea of bringing Indigenous creatives together was something I was looking for. And just having Sean Kwani, Unique, and myself kind of start thinking about ideas, and not only just thinking about ideas, but acting on them. We all had kind of this idea of like, well, we need to get more Indigenous designers in places like Roosevelt Row Welcome Center, for the AIG poster show. And I think that really kind of helped spark some momentum for us to kind of find more Indigenous designers to collaborate, because we all have this idea of like, I've never seen like another Indigenous designer, but now there's this hub of Indigenous designers that are coming together.
We're building the community.
And building it. Yep. And I think that's kind of something I've been very fortunate to witness, because you don't get the opportunity very often in your lifetime to experience something like this at the very beginning. And I'm kind of excited to see where this is going to go for the next 5 to 10 years. And that we're not just in kind of plant the seed here, but what are we going to do across the country? What are we going to do worldwide as far as like influence and showing the rest of the world what the Southwest has to offer?
So let's talk a little bit about the future, because you brought that up just a little bit. When you think about bringing other members to this group, what can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah, what does that look like, and what do you envision for all of them?
So I'm gonna take this in a different direction, because I think one thing that I've noticed in the 19 years that I've been a designer in an urban space is that there aren't a whole lot of design people coming together. It wasn't until 2012 or 2013 that there was an established design community that started like gathering. And so it's fairly new. And even within that area, there wasn't, anytime I would go to these design events, I would be the only brown person, or there would be a lack of people of color in these spaces. And so for me, I intentionally infiltrate spaces like that, but I also know that I bring my community with me. And so the intention of creating this group was so that I now can go into a space and bring the Native design community with me and have a safe space for them to play, create things in and explore and ideate. But for the future, and this has always been the plan, is that we need more creative designers, Indigenous designers. And if we can activate the youth to begin thinking about their talents in a way that leads to a professional career, with that knowledge, we can then tell our youth, like, we're in the digital age, we are living in a modern life, in a contemporary life, and we now have the ability to imprint our culture on what exists today. And that's through communication tools, videography, film, photography, writing, I mean, zines, design work, architecture. You think about it, design goes so many levels in so many directions, but it's intentional storytelling and intentional embedding of culture. So that's where I see this like in the future, is that we just have more Indigenous design professionals out there, and now we can really build on this higher level and really create place. It's all about place keeping.
Okay. Hey, you just dropped the bomb there. That was nice. I was feeling that. I thought I don't know what the equivalent for chip for a woman is, but okay,
Grandma mode. I don't know. Grandma mode, no. Anti mode.
I like anti mode.
What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, in regards to, design and how it's embedded in our culture, just like what Unique was saying is, we found there's always been a problem, and then we found ways that have connected us to our traditional teachings through, through just doing things like singing songs or doing the traditional chants. Like, that's a way of remembering your stories. And that's something my grandma always told me was, make sure you remember your songs so that you can remember them. And that was kind of like something you would do like during like an activity, like you could do it in your head, or when you're alone, you could do those chants so you'd remember it. And for me, I think that's a great design solution, and that you're using that sort of approach to memorize stories and to pass that on to the next generation. So I think naturally we are designers. We are always finding solutions to help us, carrying on the stories of our ancestors and our elders,
and sustain our existence, like our way of life. Our way of life is not a Western way of life,
exactly.
But yet we live in a Western society. So how do we then move forward with this blended reality? Which again, you go back to talking about we live in two worlds, right? And we're always on that line. So as designers, how do we make both worlds work for us? And how do we amplify it?
I like how you said blended reality. I think that's I could visualize that. But I think with my experience with working and collaborating with IDC, I think what you guys truly teach me, because again, outsider looking in, what you truly teach me is like making those connections for me, that I'm like, oh, so I am a creative, or I am this, or I do have this innate ability to do this, because traditionally we used to do this, or I'm finding the connection to my own community and to my own tribe, with how to creatively process some of these things that we're doing in our collaborative projects. So I think that's what you guys are doing really great of, and I want to share it with the world. I want everyone to see that this is what's happening. And
we're all storytellers in our own way.
Yeah.
We're all trying to tell our story and keep our story going forward. So just us being designers means that we're utilizing tools, we're utilizing data, we're utilizing applications, we're utilizing resources around us that we have access to. And for the most part, designers have access to a lot. Like, we were taught, like I went to school for 3 years to learn almost every application that lent itself for website design, print design, and anything that followed thereafter. And then I keep on learning.
So what is the difference then? Like, what's the difference between an artist and a designer?
I never saw myself as an artist. I recently started telling myself that I'm an artist. But I like to draw, and I like to paint, and I like to create things when I was growing up. But I always identified myself as a designer. And so now when you think about it, like how you separate the two is an artist is an expression of self, an expression of who you are, and you don't have to interpret it for anybody. You don't have to translate it. You just are, right? And you're creating from that space. Whereas a designer is trying to create from a space that solves a problem that exists. And the problems are usually people-centered. They're humanistic. in the way that they exist, and you're just trying to solve a communication issue, right? Like a marketing issue or a website issue, or you're trying to get people to buy stuff at a quicker pace, or you're trying to, so it's more of using your creativity, the skill that you had as an artist, and you're now building it towards, well, how can I influence people with this creativity, and what is that solution? And you're really mapping solutions, and you're experimenting with them. A lot of times designers will try things just to see if they'll make an influence, and if they do, then they'll take another step and then twist it a little bit, you know, make a slight change, and then see if that works, right? And if they get a better response, then they do it. If they don't get a better response, then they pivot to another direction. So they're always testing their solutions.
Yeah, and I think it's a very symbiotic type of relationship between artists and designers that I think a lot of other fields don't really have. But I think as far as you know, trying to find just a really simple solution, I think when artists and designers come together, that's when you can do some really big impact on a national level or even a global level. And when you combine those two together, you know, it's a very powerful dynamic between the two. And when you put a problem in front of them, that's very much tied to them, you know, and on an emotional level or a family level or whatever, you know, there's nothing that's going to stop them from trying to figure something out. You know, thinking outside the box, but also having a structure, a plan in place, research in place to help develop that to carry on.
Having a strategy, an outlook and a strategy of like, okay, what problem are we trying to solve by bringing all these creatives together, right? And for our programming and a lot of the programming that we do in downtown Phoenix, a lot of it is we want to keep our place. We want to keep our place in downtown Phoenix as the development is happening and as things are being built. And, you know, instead of complaining that they're removing us or there's displacement or there's gentrification, well, what are we going to do about it? You know, like we can't just wait for somebody to solve the problem for us. We have to solve it ourselves. And so then you create programming, then you create template models, and you create access. You create accessible systems. I'm very much a systems person too, so I love designing in systems. I don't think I threw out there that I'm an application analyst, so it's more of I'm now trying to fine-tune the system at a higher level to allow people to enter the space.
Oh, you guys got me pumped.
But that's the thing is like, you know, to have like people who are going to make a difference in that space, you need someone who's super creative. You know, super creative
You got to plug them in.
Yeah, because I mean, you have these people who are programmers who are just, you know, one way, you know, but, you know, thinking about different systems and thinking about it in a creative sense, like that's what most companies, especially, you know, corporate companies, are looking for.
So what would you tell an artist who is being discouraged to do art?
Well, I have a very personal experience in that when I was going through school, about sophomore, maybe my sophomore, no, I want to say my senior year. That's when I was thinking about my career. I really wanted to be an artist. Like, I loved drawing. I was involved. I was a thespian. Like, I was in drama. I just was called to the arts. And everywhere I turned, all the teachers that I had and all of my family would say, "Don't be an artist. There's no money in that." And that there's no professional career in artistry. You're basically going to be living a very poor lifestyle. And that's where the term comes from of starving artists, right? That you're starving to survive and you're starving to have people see you and value you, and you're just creating. And so in looking at in how that rolled out, I immediately said, well, what can I do that incorporated my art, but also allowed me to keep learning all the tools that I could have around me. And if you know one thing about artists, we utilize everything around us to create stuff. Like, I mean, I've seen guys like using toothbrushes to like create splatters on paint, right?
Oh yeah.
So you're utilizing the resources you have. That's artistry. But I wanted to do it on a very technical level, and my favorite movie was Hackers. And so I
like
just
that movie.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So like I was like, okay, if hackers are being really creative and they're using like these cool application tools, right? I can get into that. So it's almost like when you're being discouraged to take an art path, you have to come back and say, well, art isn't just painting, or art isn't just this, because a lot of people try and put art into a tiny little box, and they say you can't make money doing this. But what they don't know is when you start talking about creativity, creativity is super valuable, and there's only a certain amount of people that can have it and apply it.
Yeah.
So that's your power.
Yeah.
Your creativity is your power. Use it well.
I think the same thing happens with designers. I think when people hear the word design, especially when I talk to my grandma or when I talk to my relatives, like, okay, and you explain it to them and you come back to them like maybe like a week later, what do you do again? Like, I'm a designer. They're like, oh, what is that again? You know, and I think there are two kind of sides to that, in that no one knows what a designer is or what design does, and it's funny because design is ubiquitous. Like, it's all around us. Everything that's from a chair to a table to this architecture has all been designed. From the menu, from those containers to the bowl, everything is designed. You know, so I think it's really hard to kind of explain what design is, and that's kind of the complexity behind that a little bit. And the other side is when people hear the word design, they think of this person, you know, all dressed in black, you know, going through a kind of like a art gallery or something, and just like judging paintings and stuff like that. And that's what I thought a designer was, and I was like, I don't want to be that, you know. But then I started getting introduced to like David Carson, who's an amazing designer, and he's the type of designer that breaks all the rules. And when you talk to someone who's a designer, their first initial intent is to try to create clarity in a message, right? So clearly communicate, and that can be just something that's on a blank piece of paper that says a blank word that says like happy, right? In black and white. But is it really happy? You know, it's not. You know, it just says happy. There's no expression behind it. It's dead. And so what David Carson does is he kind of takes that aspect and he kind of twists it. He breaks the rules. He changes the type up. He changes the kerning. He doesn't use grid systems at all. But his whole idea is that he's trying to communicate emotion. If you can communicate emotion properly, like you can grab someone's attention and create an emotion, you've done your job. And that's like the kind of convergence between a designer and an artist.
So if I were to throw this one out, this is probably like a little deep, so you might have to think about this. But there's I know your guys' backgrounds, right? Where you came from, where you were raised, and if you were to speak to a little res kid living in a rural community and, you know, just going to school, but doesn't really realize that they're really creative, like artists, very creative. All the time, it's like I'm artists, I paint, weave, I do whatever, right? If you were to give them advice, what would it be for that little? If you were to tell yourself, your little res kid self,
I would tell my little res kid self that mistakes are okay, and that you should encourage yourself to make more mistakes, especially in the creative realm. Hence, you know, bad decisions are bad decisions, and we all learn from them at some point. But mistakes are just things that you stumble on every day. Everybody goes through iterations of mistakes, but if you learn from them and you build from them, and you say like, oh, I tried that before, how can I design my life tomorrow that won't happen again? And then you're coming from a place of adding your creativity to it. I think you can really empower kids at a young age to really make great decisions for themselves. I did not have good grades growing up. Like, I was a person that was daydreaming, that was talking all the time, and was in trouble. The teacher would send me out. I would be sitting at the door, missing the entire class. But I figured out a way to get myself through school, and it was through people and creativity. and just really applying myself, and then realizing like, oh, you know, in this system that I am, the school system, I have to make a C or better to graduate, and I know I don't want to be in school forever. So you make a plan, right? So how are you going to do that? Well, now I'm just going to apply myself and like make a club that I really want to hang out in and that I'll get a good grade from. And then it'll be counted towards my science grade.
She literally did, by the way.
Which I literally did that. But I mean, that's just learning on a whole nother level of like how to feed yourself the things that you need to grow.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say if you're graduating high school, a lot of people will have, you know, conflicting opinions about what I have to say, but there's no pressure in having to go into higher education right after high school if you're not ready. I think there's this pressure to go into to higher education right out of high school. And I think if you can do it, that's great, but not everybody can do it. And for myself, like I went to higher education right after high school, and I wish I would have waited, because I spent 3 years just screwing around, and I dropped out. So I didn't really like get like an appreciation for education until like I was like 25. You know, between like 20 and 24, like I spent most of my time in the outdoors. Like I love being outdoors. I was a firefighter between that time, and I'm so happy I was able to do that during that time. But you know, after that, like I appreciated education. I appreciated that, you know, what I was paying for. These instructors were putting all their time into making sure that my future was going to be somewhat hopeful. So, and I went to a really good art school when I got out. It was expensive. It was really easy to get into, but it was the Art Institute of Phoenix, and I studied graphic design. And I think just understanding that the education portion, that you don't always have to go out right outside of high school.
I think those were such good insights, right? Like we always feel pressure. It doesn't matter. That pressure never leaves. High school, college,
career, get a job. Yeah.
So don't
make a living.
Be pressured.
Don't be pressured. Go at your
rate. Yeah. But I love great advice. I think my last question for today is going to be around, you know, what's in store for the future for Indige Design Collab.
Yeah. What do you think? There's so many ideas.
Well, we're in Florida right now, so
yeah. We didn't plan for this, and that was the thing.
It just happened. We are open to opportunities. We want to work and collaborate with anyone and everyone. There's a mutual effort in community. It's not just Indigenous people, it's everyone in the Indigenous community, which, you know, we have to kind of have this understanding that you are on Indigenous land, anywhere in the Americas or anywhere on this continent. So we need to begin building communities that involve Indigenous people, and we're here. We're right here. I think, and then the B, bringing more designers in. Like I want to put more call for arts out. I want to put create more programs that really bring mentorship into spaces where you have younger people being a part of the design process, because design thinking is a totally different way and a different perspective to look at the world. And it's with the lens of I matter, my ideas matter, and I can create change. If you can give that to somebody through a mentorship program, that would be amazing. And we have a lot of really cool designers that are doing some cool things. I mean, and they keep it to themselves, right? Because a lot of Native people are humble. They're humble about their work, and they don't really put it out there. But it's just like, wow, dude, you just did that, like, and you're not talking about it, and you're not well, why not share that story with the younger generation and let them know that they have the power to change?
Cool. Well, I think that's all I have. So thank you guys for joining us on our season premiere. So glad to have you guys. So happy to be in company with you. So happy to do work with you, and looking forward to future collaborations. So
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for tuning in for REZponse. So every Wednesday we drop a new episode. So make sure you like and subscribe and share. So we'll see you guys next Wednesday.